So I think coming off the back of St. Maud, I didn't have a clear story in mind, but I just knew I really wanted to try something different and maybe explore a genre that I hadn't really done anything in before. And also just sort of take some risks and try something that I wasn't totally sure if I could pull off or not. And I knew I wanted it to be kind of pulpy and melodramatic and violent and bombastic and just really fun, though. I think that was the main sort of feeling going into it. I just wanted to kind of let loose a bit and take some risks. And story-wise, I basically just... The hook in was just thinking it would be really fascinating to tell a story about a female bodybuilder. I don't know, I mean, as someone who's very obviously not a female bodybuilder, I think, to me, it just seems like very psychologically interesting territory, sort of thinking about the qualities that it takes somebody to get themselves looking like that, the sort of discipline and obsessiveness. And I don't know, when I started following that, it became... I was interested in the idea of how those kind of qualities might either clash with or spill over into other areas of someone's life. And there's something about, I don't know, there's just something about bodybuilding that's kind of, I just find sort of anarchic and beautiful and strange. It's kind of a performance art as much as it is a sport. And I don't know, there's all these kind of like interesting contradictory sort of elements to it, because I suppose, you know, it takes so much physical training, but then, you know, looking into it, it sort of seems that for the tiny window of time that they're actually looking like this for competing, you know, they've had to dehydrate and are actually sort of physically almost frail. So, you know, it's creating strength and muscles, but for aesthetic purposes. I don't know, and I found that sort of contradiction kind of interesting. And then the other thing in the very beginning was like, okay, something in that kind of tone and with that sort of character. But I also knew I didn't want to write this one alone. I wrote St. Maud by myself. And again, I just wanted to kind of try a different approach. And so I teamed up with Veronika Tafilska, who I went to film school with years ago, and she's a writer-director as well, and we read all each other's scripts and, you know, are really close friends anyway, so I kind of just thought this would be a really fun way to work. Yeah, and that was, yeah, sorry, that was a very long, roughly answer to, yeah.
Not in the slightest. I love the neon signs, you know, the desert haze. I love all the signals to Americana. You know,
yeah.
Is that something that you'd always wanted to do as well? Given what, you know, the look of St. Maud and then Love Lies Bleeding is such a different look as well, cinematically.
Yeah, the whole setting it in America was, I think once we started writing the script, you know, and the story became more fleshed out, it definitely seemed to make the most sense to set it in America. But initially I was a little nervous and resistant to the idea. I didn't set out thinking, oh, I want to do the second film in America. I think I was quite intimidated by the idea of doing that, but the story and characters that me and Vera created, it just sort of ended up leading that way. And as soon as we did, though, it kind of opens up a lot of, I think setting it in America, we then found ourselves enjoying leaning into some of the, and playing with sort of tropes of different genres of American movies, like sort of thrillers and romances from that sort of time period, but also there's, you know, some kind of noirish sort of influences. I think because that time and space in America in films has this sort of like mythological kind of quality almost, that's sort of so, you know, even without having ever been to that bit of the country, so many things, I don't know, in America feel familiar to people who aren't from there, because it's so, there's so many things and influences from cinema of that kind of time, which has just kind of seeped into all of our collective cultural consciousness. So anyway, I don't know, so I think we enjoyed sort of like leaning into and playing with some of these sort of tropes of these genres, but then hopefully, you know, like run towards the cliche and then jump over it, or subvert it in hopefully an interesting way.
You did, for sure. It's really original. Can you tell me about why you thought Kristen Stewart would make a good Lou?
I think I just really like the idea of Kristen being a sort of contemporary version of like a moody film noir anti-hero kind of person who's like haunted by their past and smokes too many cigarettes, and I don't know, I just like the idea of her being a sort of, I don't know, weird heartthrob kind of character. It was just quite instinctual. I just was very, she just sort of like came into my head pretty early on when we were writing it, and it just felt like a very natural fit. I'm surprised she hasn't played more roles like this already. So yeah, I just thought it'd be really fun.
She seems in her elements. She delivers a terrific performance, I think.
Yeah.
But also, you know, did she want to do it when you met? So I understand that you really hit it off, you know, straight away. But was she really interested in playing Lou when you talked to her about it?
Apparently, yeah. I mean, I'd sort of heard through the grapevine that she'd seen St. Maud and liked it, which was great. And then we did meet, and yeah, we, you know, really clicked and got on. Really, to be honest, I thought our first meeting went really awkwardly because I think I was just incredibly nervous. But she sent me a really nice message afterwards, and she was just incredibly open and basically made it quite clear to me that she was just very up for working together. So I think she was quite open to whatever the thing was, which was really lovely. Yeah, sorry, I forgot the question.
That's all right. It was about Kristen, but I need to ask about Katie as well.
Yeah,
I mean, how fortunate do you feel to have Katie with her background in bodybuilding, and she really, you know, knocks it out of the park in terms of performance as well? Yeah,
Katie's phenomenal, and like the performance she gives in this, I really think is, I mean, just on so many levels. I really think, you know, just as a, I think it's fair to say it's kind of her first like lead dramatic role, and you know the character goes on some really big kind of ups and downs. She's got all these huge kind of like quite dramatic scenes with Kristen, who's obviously been doing this forever, and her performance just really really blew me away. I think she's a phenomenal actor, and then on top of that, you know, we were doing these, you know, obviously a very full intense shoot, and then on top of that she was essentially doing a full-on kind of physical training regime as if she was preparing for a bodybuilding competition. So yeah, her commitment was really impressive, and I guess that, you know, that's probably feeds into why she's so perfect to play the role, because, you know, similarly to Jackie, I guess, you know, I can't remember what bit, I've forgotten where she's from, but I don't know, maybe there's some sort of parallels. She's kind of been on a journey of sort of coming from somewhere that's very not Hollywood, and then really sort of followed her passions and overcome a lot of adversity, I think, and has real strength. I don't know, but I think it's that, and she's obviously got this kind of incredible physicality, and she can give this, you know, the character goes to some quite sort of dark places, and in some elements she has to almost embody being like a kind of action hero, which I think comes quite effortlessly to her. But as well as that, like underneath these harder elements of the character, what I love about Katie is just the kind of softness and vulnerability and sort of delicacy of her performance. And I think this kind of duality about her and those sort of different qualities of like hardness and softness, and I don't know, I hope that both characters, I think, have this kind of, you know, contradictory sort of elements. And in some ways they're both kind of just big dorks kind of hiding in sort of cool, moody sort of shells with great hair. Yeah, I'll stop gushing. Katie's incredible.
I've got two questions left, so just two. I mean, the tone of the film is violence. I'm so sorry.
That's probably mine. I'm so sorry.
Don't worry. We've been pinging at OK times, so we're talking, I think. So it's violent but funny. Yeah. You know, at the same time. Was that the tone you were aiming for?
Yes. Yeah. It was like a weird one trying to sort of explain the tone to people, because I think because there's a lot of sort of quite dark subject matter in it. There were a couple of people who were working on the film, so it was only as we were shooting it, they came up to me and were like, "Oh, we're making a comedy." I was kind of like, "Oh, yeah." They're like, "Ah, okay." Sort of thing. I mean, like a sort of like, I don't know, I guess it's like a pretty dark, weird comedy, and I mean, I don't know, I find it weird to gauge this sort of stuff. I went into Maud thinking elements of that were like funny. I mean, this one's much more leaning into it, but I don't know, for me, the sort of, I don't think I'd know how to make a film that doesn't have humour in it, even when life's sort of at its worst and awful, I don't know, tragedy, comedy, hand in hand, etc. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I said, it was. I think on this one, I did just want to make something really fun and try and just make the most entertaining thing. something that people hopefully really enjoy watching with an audience, and just sort of take some big swings and see if it works.
I just see it as a love story. You know, I know that, again, from sitting in the press conference yesterday, people are really thrilled that it has queer characters in it as well. I like what Kristen said yesterday about, you know, telling stories adjacent to experiences rather than it being, you know, it's almost like, you know, it's not a huge statement. But it is nevertheless some kind of landmark as well. How do you feel about it, Rose?
I don't know if I'd call it a landmark, but I mean, yeah, I mean, for me, the fact that they're queer characters, I never wanted it to be a film about the fact that they're queer characters. They just are. It's sort of inherent in it, and you know, obviously, there's been many great films done which are looking at kind of coming out stories and you know, all these slightly more familiar, maybe, sides of queer stories, I suppose. And I just, personally, that just wasn't the thing that kind of drew me into telling this story. This was just how the characters came out, so the queerness is just baked in. And, you know, even I was kind of aware of that when we're sort of writing, you know, the dynamics of Lou and her family and her dad. It's like, yes, she's got issues with her dad and they're estranged and she hates him, but it's not about the fact that he disapproves of her sexuality or something. It just felt like that was maybe, you know, that just felt like very familiar. So I guess with a lot of aspects of the story, not just the romance, you know, it's trying to avoid the overly familiar thing.
Thank you so much, Rose. Thank you.